Welcome to The Ambiguous Show, a podcast for those who live in the in-between. I'm your host, Ashley Blake. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode. I hope you're having a great week. First things first, I wanted to address a little question that I've gotten from a couple people lately. When I say a podcast for those in the in-between, what does this mean? Apparently, it's not clear, but guess what? It's the Ambiguous Show, so. I've been thinking about whether to give language that is a little more descriptive or not. Yeah, I'm still undecided on that one, guys, but I can do a little bit of talking about this. So, as an actor and as a writer, I think that people, and as a musician, honestly, in any artistry, people want to put you in a box so they know how to market you. But the thing is, there are so many of us that don't fit into those stereotypical boxes. And that's what's really beautiful. But so then what do we do with that? I think that one of the main missions here is to highlight that people are multifaceted, okay? We have multiple heritages, or we have multiple interests, or multiple artistries. I want people to know that it's okay to be your whole self, and it's okay if that doesn't fit into whatever room it is that you're trying to bring it into. But guess what? We can create our own rooms. We can create our own doors. We can create our own spaces. And for me personally, yeah, that means first generation, second generation American stories. That means immigrant stories. That means minority stories. That means maybe even stories that aren't in English. Because guess what? It's a whole big wide world. And I know that like a lot of the world likes to think that people should speak in English if they want to communicate, but I'm not one of those people. So when I say a podcast for those who live in the in-between, yes, I do talk a lot about culture because I think that it's important at this point in time to address a lot of the cultural things that have been pushed aside in the past. But to be honest, I'm pretty sure that everyone has had some moment in their life where they didn't exactly fit in to wherever it is that they are. Or even what's in between, right? In between where you are today and what you dream to be, where you are today and what you want to accomplish. I think that there's a lot to say for the places in the in-between. I think those places in between are really special places. They're the places where you have to build your paths and decorate and construct your own bridges. They're the places that are really beautifully communal. Because I don't really know anyone that's just made it and no longer has any other ambition to be a better human or, be better at their skill set. And I don't know anyone that is at the beginning and is okay just staying at the beginning, complacent. I don't know anything there. What I know is that there are people who are in the in-between, who are on this journey of finding more out about themselves, finding more about how they can invest in their community and in the people around them. Maybe that's a little too much. Maybe I should break it back down. See, this is why. This is why we stuck with the one line, because I could go on for days. And I always like to shout out my introverted extroverts because everyone in the world thinks that I am extroverted just because I'm on stage a lot or I talk a lot on stage. But let's be real, my anxiety levels for regular conversation are the most high. I actually had a class today with a tutor. And she was like, "Oh, you're so shy." And I was like, "Right. Let me try to put words together in a sentence. Let me see if I can do it. I can't." Anyways, I think that there's a place for all of us here, is what I'm trying to say. But yes, I do also think that a lot of the conversations so far on the podcast have been culturally geared because I think that there's just a lot to address that is not getting addressed as much as it should. And here I am as a Black woman in America who grew up in Central Asia, whose family is Jamaican. I got a lot of ties to a lot of things. And what I think is really special about that, what I love so much about my story and my experience, is that it ties me to a lot of different people in a lot of different places. And I'm really grateful for that. Because when you don't fit inside a box, that means you get to hold hands with everyone in all the other boxes. So I look at it as a strength, not a weakness. I hope you do too. Anywho, that's my little spiel on that. Guys, I really hope you're doing well. Let me tell you. I don't like to dwell on serious things that often, and I feel like I keep finding myself coming back to these really heavy topics, and I don't know what to do with that. You guys give me some feedback. But I also feel like it was a necessary thing to address, and it's something that I have processed a lot over this last year. So I didn't want to bypass this moment. I'm big on marking the moment. That's like was my whole thing of 2020. I taught at a couple writers retreats, and I did a couple different speaking events last year. And if you heard any of them, they were probably about marking the moment, because I felt like it was just culturally necessary and appropriate to lean into that. And I think that this is, again, one of those times where there's just a cumulative number of events that have really, oh man, that have really just pressed into my heart, and that have been pretty heavy on me. And for anyone who's an empath, holler to all my empaths out there. So, okay, so what I was gonna say though, let's be real, is that this is a semi-heavy topic. I'm not taking it lightly, but I also don't want to be the most depressing person you've ever heard. Like, I don't want to cry today. Not today. I cry like 6 days out of 7, but hopefully this is not an episode that makes you cry, but gives you hope and, gives you comfort and, lets you know that you're not alone. That's the goal. Not like, let's think more about bad stuff. Okay. Okay. I mean, you saw the title. You know what we're talking about. We're talking about cultural tragedies or cultural grief, responding, processing. What do we do with these tragedies? What do we do with the racism in America? Black lives being taken, Asian lives being taken. What do we do with the war in Israel and Palestine? What do we do with finding 215 children's bodies at a Canadian residence school? What do we do almost every day? There's something new coming on the news of people losing their lives, of something being stolen, of people being oppressed. And honestly, all over the world, there are people who are looking for freedom. There are people who want equality, and it's not given to them. So what do we do when we hear news stories, when we see images of people dying, and our communities are rallying, our communities are crying out? What do we do with this collective grief? What do we do with that? I want to talk about 3 things in processing this kind of cultural grief. I don't think anyone needs to say 2020 was a hard year. It was especially hard for minorities in America. There was a lot of racial tension. And for anyone who is like me, who is an artist or a speaker or anything like that, you probably got a lot of extra calls or emails asking you to help white people navigate what was happening that they were unaware about until then. And so it's not one of those things where like, oh, it's new. Racism's new. No, racism's never been new. We've been experiencing it our whole entire lives. But there's something else that happens when it becomes this collective experience, right? it changes things. I definitely think this past year, it's become more aware, to me at least, of how much it can take a toll on not only my mental state, but my physical and emotional selves. And the thing about it is that as much as we move forward and as much as we fight for progress, like the world will always be hurting in some way. People will always be hurting. So what do we do with that? So I'm going to talk about 3 things. But before I get to that, I guess, is this a good time to break? Here we go.
This podcast was created with Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to get started in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Okay, so 3 steps to processing collective cultural grief. Step 1, which may be the most obvious, but sometimes we need to remember, allow ourselves to grieve. It's okay to be sad. Trying to ignore the gravity of what is happening is only going to delay your ability to walk through the process. And I know that especially a lot of minorities, a lot of immigrant kids, like we're taught to be strong. We're taught to put our heads down and get through something. We're taught to do all the hard work and not deal with the emotions of things. But that's not healthy at all. Like, obviously, it doesn't work. It's not healthy. We have got to allow our whole selves to mourn in the ways that we need to mourn. The feelings aren't just going to go away. And honestly, generally speaking, when we don't mourn properly, when we don't give ourselves time to grieve, then our feelings do that spiraling thing where it's like an avalanche or like a snowball that rolls down a hill and then all of a sudden becomes an avalanche, and things get out of control really quickly because we're not doing what our bodies want us to do. It's so important. Not only, for your emotional health and your mental health, but wow, you can carry so much pain in your body that is not meant for you to carry just by holding on to an emotion that you need to process. Friends, let's not hurt our bodies anymore. Allow yourself to mourn. It's okay. These events are not things that can be processed or bypassed lightly. Lives were taken. And it's okay to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that within ourselves. And, you might be the kind of person that's like, I can't be upset about this because it's not my thing to be upset about. Like, I'm not allowed to mourn someone else's grief. I'm not a part of that community, so what do I do with that? We all, oh man, we all have the permission to mourn something sad. You don't need a special black card. You don't need a culture card. You don't need someone to stamp your ID or nothing. Like, you have permission to feel what you feel about what is taking place in the world. 2, we have to allow ourselves time to disconnect. And this is big in a lot of ways. We have to give language to our feelings. What do I mean by this? So, a few years ago, I remember being on a panel and someone asking a question about, like, what do you do when you get blocked creatively? And it was so funny because I was like, what is this block? I don't understand this question. I don't get blocked. That's not a thing. Like, you just work more, work harder. If you keep working, then you won't get blocked. Like that was like my mentality, right? I didn't say that because I'm not mean on purpose, at least. I didn't say it out loud, but that's what I was thinking internally. And then last year I realized I started getting blocked, which was honestly, I would say, new for me. I tend to actually not get blocked. Like I know this last year has been a separate thing that we'll talk about. But so before, because I'm a multidisciplinary artist, which that word really bothers me, but I don't know what else to say. I usually just pivot into another medium. So if I don't have anything musically, then I just pivot into writing. If I don't have anything writing wise, I just pivot and do more film work, more acting. If I feel really drained auditioning, then I pivot and do poetry videos or do photography. Like I'm a professional pivoter. And so I've never really felt blocked because I never stopped long enough. Like I would just keep moving. Which like is good with in some realm. But last year was the first time that I was really stuck and like nothing could come out of me. And I was really just so heavy, but I didn't have language for it. When I get blocked creatively, I know that it is solely because there's something within me that I have not identified. And my body wants me to do something about it. My mind wants me to do something about it. My emotions are yearning for me to do something about it. But if I don't, and if I just let it sit inside of me, I mean, I still could live my life, but man, it was not great. I can say that. And a lot of the times, to be transparent, I have dealt with depression and anxiety, both, since I was very young. So this is something that I know well. And when it comes, it usually comes in waves. But once the waves get to a certain point, it's actually really hard to get out of them. And what I mean by that is like for like seasons. Like if we're in a big wave, it's going to be a season. It's not just something that comes and then it's gone on Friday. Take the weekend off, anxiety. See you on Monday. It's not like that. It takes quite a bit of time. What were we talking about? Oh, I have some tactics for this. Trying to find language for your emotions. And what I'll say first is journaling. And I know that might be like weird because like it's like a trendy thing to say to journal. And that's not my intention at all. Like journaling, legit. I would never tell you to do something I have not done. Journaling legit saves lives. I mean, just okay, I can't give you any evidence of this, but I fully believe it. I just looked down at my notes, y'all, and for real, I am doing this out of order. I skipped to the journaling, so we're going to roll with it. I'm going to just go with that, okay? So if you're like, why is this girl like making like zigzags and like talking in a weird, not a circle, like it's like a loopty something or other, that's what happened. Let's just go with it, okay? Journaling. Anyways, I was reading a medical article and they were talking about reducing stress. And it said that journalism, it said that journaling is proven to reduce stress and helps the brain regulate emotions. Reduce stress, regulate emotions. It's basically mindful connectivity to emotion. The worst part for me about being emotionally overwhelmed is when you're not even sure what you're feeling. Like, even a few minutes of writing insignificant lines can turn into a really meaningful session of identifying what your own needs and what your actual experience is. And I mean, some people, absolutely am for therapy. I currently do not see a therapist, but I know that it's just so, I mean, it's the same thing, right? Of getting things out of yourself, whether it's through your mouth or through the writing of your hand, typing on the computer, whatever it is, getting something out of you, words out of you, is just so beneficial. It's like trying. I was about to plug another piece that I did. Listen, I'm sorry. It's just like the life of the artist, digging up your graves, not letting stuff stay buried inside of you. We have to bring it out. There are things that we have to bring out, otherwise we'll never be able to heal from them. Yeah, so if you want to listen, Dig Up Your Graves, it's on YouTube. It's a poetry piece about basically that experience for me. So when I was getting a bunch of requests to speak to people and to have meetings and conversations with leaders and organizations that are not diverse, it was really hard for me at one point because I was emotionally exhausted. And then there came a point where I just started burying those emotions because they were so hard. They were really hard to bring out constantly. And they were really hard to work through with people that didn't understand them, but wanted to. It's just hard work, guys. Like dealing in deep conversations and dealing with deep racial trauma, that's not an easy topic. If you do it 5 days a week, it can be really draining, especially to emotionally sensitive people like myself. 3 wing 4, hello wing 4s, hello empaths. It was really draining for me. And so at one point, I just realized that I had started burying a bunch of that stuff. But then I also realized that I can't live like that. I can't live with all of my experience and all of my feelings and all of my trauma buried in a grave somewhere. That to heal, I needed to pull them back up and I needed to process them well. If I was overwhelmed, then I needed to take a moment to disconnect. If I was overwhelmed, I needed to take a moment to let myself mourn. It was so important for me to give myself language so that I knew what I was dealing with. And sometimes if you don't have language, sometimes you need to look to artists. Sometimes you need to look to poets or filmmakers, someone else who has words that can help you understand what it is that you're going through. Last year, I spent a good deal of time just listening and reading poets from the Harlem Renaissance. That gave so much of a voice back to me that I had been burying. I know that sometimes in film, well, I mean, obviously as an actor, film is something that is really close to me because I think that film specifically will help you understand an emotion, even if it doesn't speak to that emotion specifically. And that's why you'll find yourself crying all of a sudden or something because you witness someone else's experience and you can identify within that character. And you can identify within their experience. And sometimes that will bring enlightenment to you. You look to artists because when you're struggling, there's a piece that I have of Jury. I might talk about Jury every week, y'all. I don't know. Jury is one of my favorite artists. There's a piece that she has that's entitled Strong or Weak. And it's a woman with her hands in a fist up close to her face. I think there's blood on her knuckles. There's a tear coming down her face. Strong or weak. I look at that every day because honestly, it gives me strength. One, to know that you can fight and cry at the same time. I'm a fighter/crier. But also because depending on how you look at it, depending on what day, does this woman look weak or does she look strong? Or does she look both? I think there's strength and weakness. I think there's strength in allowing yourself to be weak. I think there's weakness in pretending to be strong all the time. When you need to give yourself language, I dig for those words within myself, or I look to the artists around me to give me strength and to give me vocabulary for what it is that I'm feeling. Another thing that I use, and this may seem really ridiculous, but I am perfectly fine with being ridiculous. I legitimately use emotion wheels. when I'm not sure the exact feelings that I'm feeling. I mean, you can literally just Google emotion wheel. There are some that are better than others. But yeah, I will look at the wheel because this is so important, guys. It's not good enough to say, I'm sad, because that really doesn't tell yourself that much. I'm sad. Well, what does that really mean? I think it's so important to know, do you feel bitter? Do you feel guilt? Do you feel betrayed? Do you feel hostile, threatened, inadequate, helpless, scared, anxious, numb, overwhelmed, vulnerable, violated? Knowing the exact emotion that you're dealing with is one of the best ways to help heal that emotion. So if you tell someone I'm sad, but what you really mean is I'm hostile, well, that makes it really hard for people to help you right or help you well. But also, it's a little bit misleading to yourself, because then you can start getting frustrated with yourself of why you're not advancing. I know for me personally, sometimes I will feel guilty that I haven't gotten over my sadness, but when really it wasn't sadness that I needed to get over. And when you can say, oh, it was actually bitterness, then you can deal with that bitterness. I use an emotion wheel because it's so important to know how it is that you're actually feeling. Because for the third reason, which is connecting to your community, collective grief cannot be dealt with individually. You have to reach out to your inner circle. Take pulse of your community. Plug into your community. You can't hold these burdens on your own. No one wants you to hold these burdens on your own. Talking and putting voice to the communal concerns is powerful. Sitting with your friends, even when you don't have words, is powerful. To know that you're not alone in this is powerful. Now more than ever, I think that it's essential for us to press into our friendships. It's so necessary to raise your hand and say, you're not okay. And to allow people in your community to come alongside of you. Reach out to your inner circle. Don't always wait for someone to come to you. Let me tell you, I've been in that spot a lot in my life. And the disappointment that comes when people don't come to you is sometimes as big as the other emotions. If you need help, it's okay to tell someone. If you are bitter and hostile, it's okay to tell someone. And even when that hostility or that anger or that sadness can be pointed at the person you're telling it to, guess what? That's the beauty of friendship, because then you have to work out those feelings. Anger in response to racial tension is real. And a lot of times we can be in friendship with those people that we're angry at. What do we do with that? Well, you have to talk. And when you talk, you need to have the right language to your emotions so that people can understand you well and that you can communicate efficiently so that we can get through this together. There are so many stages to healing. As someone who has walked through multiple traumas their whole life, I know that there are layers to forgiveness. There are layers to healing. There's a lot of steps and a lot of process when it comes to progress. Don't feel pressure to rush the process. I'm going to say this one more time for the people who are like me. Don't feel pressure to rush the process. It doesn't matter if your best friend has processed all of her emotions in 2 hours and knows exactly how to respond on social media. That doesn't matter. People process differently. I personally, apparently, am like a tortoise, a turtle. I'm like a sloth when it comes to process speeds. It takes me a really long time to wrap my head around all of the perspectives of a situation and then to actually have words to put to it. I am probably one of the slower processors of all of the people that I know in my circle. We don't have to know all of the answers or have a right response. I know that that is something that people have been confused about recently because of social media, because it seems like we have to respond to things immediately or we're not doing our part for justice. Sometimes, you guys, sometimes we need to not respond. Sometimes we just need to listen. Sometimes we need to listen and process and contemplate not only what is it that you're feeling, but what can I do to help this situation? Because even if you're experiencing anger, what you do with that anger, I would just submit to you that maybe some thoughtful contemplation is in order. And honestly, that community piece, maybe if we go to our community before we go to Instagram, or I don't know, people apparently are still on Twitter, wherever it is we go, maybe if we went to our friends first, maybe if we went to our mentors first, maybe if we went to our inner circle council first and had these conversations out loud with each other before we say harmful things online, maybe that would be the most helpful of all. And if you're a person who feels guilty about not voicing their concerns enough, you know what? A lot of people will say some things about that, but I would say give yourself grace. Sometimes it's good to have more questions than answers. Sometimes it's good to give yourself a moment of contemplation and to have thoughtful questions. There's no right answer to living, guys. So I just would say let's be a little bit kinder to each other. If it takes someone 1 year to process something that it took you 2 minutes, let's give them a little bit of grace because we all have strengths in different areas, and that's okay. I felt that it was really important to take a moment and to talk about this. And I just want all of you to know you're not alone. You don't need to process this alone. Yeah? Got it? Anyways, allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to disconnect and connect with your community. Also, just one last tidbit. Oh, I forgot to write this one down. One last tidbit, friends. Your input. Oh, your input is so important. If you are feeling overwhelmed emotionally, as much as it is good to listen to the news and to get information and to do your research and to be engaged and know what's going on in the world, sometimes you need to limit how much of that you are allowing into your world. Sometimes when you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed, it's because you're not inputting enough good news. Okay? And as much as there are bad things happening in the world, there are also equally good things happening. Find your joy. Find things that will bring you happiness, things that will make you smile, even if it's just ice cream. Find the good things to input into your system. If you are taking in 100% chaos and 100% grief, it's going to take you so long to pull out of that. And then it's going to make it hard to do those things of journaling or to do those things of reaching out to your people because all you are doing is inputting trauma. Watch how much you're inputting, especially if you know that you're sensitive. Holla to all the sensitive people out there. I feel y'all. Me and my sister still run out of rooms when things get a little too dramatic on television. I still fast forward through shows on Vicky when y'all be doing the most. Let me tell you, I don't do heightened drama. I feel like we've talked about this before and it's semi-ridiculous because I'm an actor. It's fine. It's fine when I'm acting. It's not fine when I'm in the audience. Anyways, friends, that's what I wanted to share with you this week because honestly, I feel like I just want to give all of my friends giant hugs and you're all spaced out so far around the world. I can't, but imagine me giving you a hug right now. If I don't know you, it's cool. It's fine. Just accept it, okay? We're all in this together. As Nick both said, we need each other. Friends. sending you all of the good energy. Okay. Honestly, I really hope that was helpful for someone. I really hope, I mean, obviously, it's nothing you haven't heard before, but sometimes it's really good to get a reminder, okay? I'm all about the reminders. I need to be reminded like 17 times in life of like normal things like breathing. I legitimately had to come to track practice early on Saturdays in high school, an hour early every week, to practice running on lines because I don't run straight. So I would zigzag in my own lane, and to practice breathing while running. I legitimately can't remember to breathe. So, obviously, you're probably a little better off than that, okay? But we are all needing reminders sometimes to take a moment to breathe. Friends, I think you should know by this point that I'm semi-crazy, but I hope that's okay. It's time for things no one pays us to love. I really need to come up with a jingle. You would think as a musician I would have a jingle and not just a random whatever I shout out at that moment. Things no one pays us to love. Okay, anyways, I'll work on that, guys. I'll put it on my list. This week, I would like to highlight, I saw this film I'm super into. And I guess this organization called Brave Space Media, they are fundraising currently, again, y'all, I love my films. What can I say? Support filmmakers. Expedition Reclamation. Reclamation. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this film. Their mission statement says we're a multiracial, women-led, radically collaborative, creative team seeking to decolonize outdoor culture, both in front of and behind the lens. We're building a blossoming community of storytellers and outdoor lovers, promoting belonging in outdoor spaces for Black, Indigenous, and women of color. And this film is stories from 12 Black, Indigenous, and women of color redefining outdoorsy and reclaiming belonging in outdoor recreation. You should follow their process, follow their journey. You can find them on Instagram at bravespace_media. I'm really into what they're doing. Their storytelling, community building, justice. I'm for it all. And so check out their Instagram. You can still follow them and support the cause through Seed and Spark. I came across them while I was on Seed and Spark a few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, but really would love to highlight them. I'm so for it, right? I'm always going to be for the multicultural, breaking the boundaries of what y'all said we can and cannot do. Anyways, that's that. I hope that wasn't reckless. Hey, so guys, listen, I'm really going to try to work hard to not edit my recklessness out. Not recklessness. I'm going to try hard to not edit my quirks out of the podcast, because I think that there's something really beautiful in not being perfect and being a little bit less than perfect. I'm trying to say positive things about myself, but here's the thing. This is my personality. It is what it is. I am not the smartest or the most articulate person in the world, but I believe in my voice and my story and what we're doing here. So I'm going to share that with you, like all the real stuff and how much I talk to myself and sing while I talk. And I hope that's okay with you guys, because it's happening. I'm going to be transparent with you. Anyways, thanks for hanging out today, guys. Remember, if you have questions, stories, shout-outs, email us at hello@moida.co, moida.co, or leave us a voicemail on our Anchor page. Support the podcast and our mission on our Anchor page. You can give as little as $1 a month at anchor.fm/theambiguousshow. You can also help by subscribing to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend. And connect with us on Instagram, because we want to talk to you guys. Like, we're literally just sitting there waiting for you. Okay, that's not true, but we do want to be friends. Come hang out with us at The Ambiguous Show. This podcast is produced by Moida, where creativity gathers and worlds collide. If you have not submitted for the Culture Magazine. You can submit at moida.co/submissions. We want to hear your stories. We're accepting essays, poetry, articles, even comics. If you are a writer or know someone who is, submit your work online. We're going to be releasing our first edition of our magazine this fall. So submit your work now. This music is brought to you by Lay. Thank you, friends, for listening. Thank you for supporting. Every week, I'm in awe that you guys keep coming back. Thank you. And remember, friends, you are exactly who you need to be. Be well.